All right, Mark, take it away. Oh, I think we're having
Hey,
a
Patrick.
little issue with
Oh,
your sound.
can mic check 1 2? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I'll sing the mic check next time. Um, really good to see some familiar faces. Patrick, you were right. What's up, Jill? Good to see you. Amanda Scully, good to see you. Carmine, drive safe. Tracy, drive safe. I appreciate you so much. For those of you that I haven't met, I just don't like you as much as the people I mentioned. I'm just kidding. It's really it's really good to see you all. Okay, so bear with me. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, Ryan or Patrick, I need screen share capability, please.
You should be good to go now.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, give me a thumbs up. Um, all right. I'll go through this presentation, and I'm going to try and leave as much time as possible for Q&A. But the timing of what Patrick asked me to talk about today is is timely, fortuitous. Coming to you guys as your food security advocate, but also a former nonprofit leader that truly believes in what you guys are all doing. You are the front lines. I continue to say this. You are the heroes. So don't ever forget that. Let's see, can I advance? All right. So just very quickly, for those of you that aren't familiar, and those of you that are driving, don't do this. You can scan this QR code to hop on OFSA's website, Office of the Food Security Advocate. There's a lot of great tools on there. A data chart book that gives you, that can help you better talk about the data that affects what our families are going through. There's a primer that talks about the what food security actually looks like and what it means. There's grant resources on there. There's a lot of different information, but also just more information on the team. So just very quickly, as I dive in, my goal here today is to talk about self-care, why I believe it's an incredibly important part of leadership in the nonprofit sector and especially in the food security space. I want to talk about self-care and how managing stress and self-care and managing burnout, how they're so tied together. But I also truly believe that managing self-care and managing burnout is essential for future planning, for future state of your organization. And you all as leaders should always be focused on future state. So I want to talk about those two things. And then very important, I will also talk about, because I know this is probably top of mind for many of you, I will also share some resources regarding knowing immigrants' rights, knowing your organizational rights. We at the governor's office will continue to publish these things, but I want to be able to touch on that. So that's my goal for this presentation. Many of you have heard me speak, so you know this. This office is created through legislation, so it is permanent. I'm part of the governor's office, and we are based physically in the Department of Agriculture, which gives us direct line of sight into all the work with New Jersey's food. We have more than 10,000 farms and 6 commercial fishing ports. We are a state that produces millions and millions of pounds of food. So connecting the food with the families that need it is a major priority for me and my office and my team this year. And many of you know this. I use this office as a convener and a collaborator. It's very hard to build collaborative relationships. I truly believe that um, a commitment of this office is to be able to supercharge your collaborative efforts at the county and municipal level. And then more than anything, we spend a lot of time, and I spend a lot of time out on the road. I was in Vineland 2 days ago and in Perth Amboy before that, because I think it's really important that when I go into meetings here in Trenton, your experiences as leaders and the experiences of the families that you're serving um, are I'm able to reference those and give those a place at the table when we're talking about this work. So that's what this office does. And what is the work, right? The work is to create, and the goal is to create true food security for our communities, for our families, for the individuals that we're serving. Many of you know this slide, that true food security means physical, social, and economic access, right? It means looking at public health, economic mobility, and economic liberation, building community power. Um, but we're not here to talk about the theoretical framework of food security. I've done that enough for Bergen County, and we can talk about that when I field questions. What we're here to talk about today is the fact that this is incredibly difficult work, and especially in this climate that we're headed into, it's incredibly difficult work. And I said this when I was with you all last at your last summit. This work often makes us feel like we have to be superhuman, but you cannot be super if you first cannot be human. Okay. And you have to remember this, and you have to appreciate that statement, especially when you're working with your teams, and when you're working with your teams and when you're working with your clients. Part of being human is being able to acknowledge that sometimes you're not okay, right? I just did this with my team yesterday, and we circled up, and I reminded them that many times it's okay to say that you're not okay. Not being okay leads to burnout. And to make ourselves okay, we have to practice self care. This is a slide, a graphic that we use and that I use when we're talking about combating adverse childhood experiences, when we're talking about, seeing people as people, when we're doing trauma informed trainings. This is a graphic that depicts what positive, tolerable, and toxic stress looks like. Stress is actually a good thing, right? Stress is what drives me to be better and do better, right? When I experience good stress, I want to come in and rock out here at my job, right? I experience stress when I'm going into a meeting with the speaker or with the governor's office, right? I experience stress when I'm preparing for this, and when I'm seeing you all sign on into a Zoom. Um, but positive stress means that you have brief increases in your stress levels, and it's able to be monitored. Tolerable stress is a serious temporary stress response, but you're able to manage it because you have positive relationships and positive habits that help you. But toxic stress, and we say this again, especially with children when we're talking about trauma informed practices, chronic toxic stress is the chronic experiencing of stress and prolonged activation of stress responses and the absence of supportive relationships. Now, ideally, in the nonprofit world, as leaders, ideally, we would like to be at the blue stage or somewhere between positive and tolerable stress, right? The reality, though, more often than not, especially in the climates that we experience, is more often than not we find ourselves somewhere between the yellow and the red state of things in terms of our stress. And admittedly, that is because this is incredibly hard and challenging work that you all are doing. So give yourself a moment to pause and ask yourself, as you are listening to me talk, where on this scale are you? And then give yourself a moment of realization that it is highly likely that many of the families that are coming to see you today or that have come to see you today are in the red section, right? And remember that what I also said this, I feel like most of my mic drop moments are when I'm with you guys in your summits. Remember that hurt people hurt people, but healed people heal people, right? So we must get into the practice of learning to be human so that we can be super, so that we can help people heal. Because that truly is how I view the work that you do. It's, yes, you're giving people food, but you're also giving people a chance to heal. So it's very important that you have an appreciation for how you are constantly healing and where you are in your stress levels. here are some practices um, that I prioritize in the morning. And I'll admit to you all, I was really bad at some of this, especially. So I left the nonprofit sector to take this job in September 26th, 2022, is when I started. But before that, I was running a sister organization to many of your organizations. And I was terrible at self-care, especially in 2020 and 2021. Um, but when I say and when I urge you all to really understand and come to appreciate where you are in your stress levels, I want to share with you all some of my self-care practices, right? Um, Incredibly important, incredibly painfully simple, but incredibly hard to do. Prioritizing self-care in the mornings. One of the main ways I do this, my eyes automatically open in the morning at 5:15. What I have had to force myself to practice, especially in the last year and a half, is to not look at or touch a screen within the first 30 minutes of me waking up in the morning. Um, Very important, because remember also, and I want to stress this, self-care is about repetition, right? And good habits and healing comes with repetition. Um, so what I do is I practice not looking at a screen in the morning. I stretch, I pray, I meditate, and then I'll start to do my work. So great example. This morning I woke up. First thing I did is kissed my 3-year-old, watched her sleep. Then I went downstairs and made myself some tea and did my stretches and my morning prayer um, and my meditation. And then I started to do this work. Prioritize it in the morning to get your endorphins going and to start the habit of doing good habits. Um, Adopting an attitude of gratitude, right? Let us remember, even when it is incredibly stressful to do the work that we do, that it is a privilege to be doing the work that we do, right? It is a privilege to be in the position that you are in. And it's very humbling and grounding and incredibly important for you all as leaders to adopt that attitude of being thankful for the privilege of serving others, especially when you are in your moments of stress. Again, it's about repetition, repetition of good habits, repetition of an attitude of gratitude. And this actually translates into using strengths based language in how you describe your work, your organization. This feeds into how you fundraise, right? If when somebody comes up to you and says, "How's it going? How are you doing?" If you find yourself more often than not saying, "Oh, it's so stressful, it's really hard, it's really bad out there," that those are very words matter. And words and repeated words become insidious thoughts that can affect your overall well-being. So adopting an attitude of gratitude gets you into the practice of using strengths-based language about how you talk about your organization, how you perceive your organization. It goes into how you fundraise, how you engage with your donors, it goes into how you talk with your team, right? And if you're looking at all of those things, it helps you to be intentional about creating a space and a team that promotes healing. And when I talk about healing, it's more than just helping somebody to put their broken arm in a sling, right? Um, Poverty, food insecurity, homelessness, uh, being chronically homeless, domestic abuse, domestic violence. These things hurt us as people, right? And many times, and I can say, I am convinced after all the years, I've been in juvenile justice and nonprofit work for 21 years now, um, and I've loved I've loved the privilege of serving many families and clients, but I am convinced none of them ever really wanted to come to me, right? I think we have to appreciate the fact that, especially when it comes to emergency feeding organizations, we're often the last line of defense, and people have tried every avenue before they come to us. And by the time they come to us, I think it's a good bet that their heart is hurting, right? And I used to tell my team this all the time: put on your trauma lens. If somebody's yelling at you, it's probably not because of you, right? Something hurts, something's broken. So, how do we create a place where we can promote healing for that brokenness? We don't have to be messiahs and saviors. We should never try to be that. We just have to create spaces where people feel seen, if only for a moment. And these are just some very simple ways to do it. I'm not going to go through all of them. Making eye contact with the people that you come into contact with, but also making eye contact with your team and with your volunteers. When you talk about the good and the bad, when you talk with an attitude of gratitude, when you talk about not being okay, eye contact is really important. And, I want to stress one of the orange boxes here: asking for opinions and listening, right? And again, this is easier to do if you are practicing repeatedly good habits of self care, asking for opinions and listening, right? And more often than not, what goes with that is saying sorry, right? You are, when I'm arguing with a team member, I'm convinced I'm probably the one who's always right. I'm just kidding. That's not, I don't feel that way. No, I'm always right. I'm just kidding. Um, when I listen to my team members, when we're really wrestling and we're really struggling, I practice really listening and saying, "What is your opinion? What is your thought?" Or what my way of saying it is, "Get me to yes. I get what you're saying. Now get me to yes. Tell me what you're thinking." And then, and this is always very hard for me. I am a prideful, imperfect person. Saying sorry. I'm sorry that you feel this way. I'm sorry that that we're arguing. I'm sorry for hurting your feelings. This is not something that I was raised to practice. It makes me feel very vulnerable to say things like this. But constant repetition of this work has taught me the value of creating a space and an environment and a team where these things can be said, because that's what healing looks like in this work, right? There's no magic bullet to creating a trauma informed organization. Or if you would like to call it a magic bullet, the magic bullet is repetition of simple yet extremely hard practices. And these simple yet extremely hard practices is how we ensure that we are okay as leaders. Remember that it is incredibly important to practice self care, to know where your stress level currently is as you get there. Um, because, as Maya Angelou said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel, right? We are conditioned, our brains are conditioned to develop based on our experiences, what we experience first before what we think, right? We often talk about these things, stress levels and the send receive between us as individuals, and remembering how we feel. We often talk about it when we talk about, again, children and childhood neurodevelopment and combating adverse childhood experiences. I personally feel we do not talk about it enough when we talk about our growth as food security leaders and the growth and evolution of our organizations as food security organizations. Um, but this is why when Patrick said, "Hey, can you come and share your opinions on self-care?" I jumped on it because I truly think it's incredibly important. And again, you're the frontliners. We rely on you so much at the state, right? And I say this when I'm in meetings here, that what you guys are doing at the county and municipal level is incredibly important. So it's incredibly important that you are taking care of yourselves. And if you're able to put into repetition taking care of yourself, um, I promise it becomes easier to think about how you take care of your organization. And here's a key to this, right? And this you don't get a pass on. None of you get a pass on this one. if you have signed up to be a leader in the nonprofit space, in the social justice space, but because I'm a food security guy, if you have signed up to be the food security leader in your organization, um, you do not get a pass in thinking about the future state of your organization, right? One thing I say when I teach people about especially things like fundraising, the game of nonprofit fundraising is to push the date when you run out of money as a nonprofit so far out that the only people that know it are the board president, the chief executive officer, and the financial officer, right? So you as a leader can never get a pass on thinking about the future state of your organization. And think about this as well. When people come to us broken and in need of help, one of the main things that we should be able to help them to see and feel is hope. And hope means being able to aspire for something better. Hope means being able to look towards the future. So we as leaders must be able to have the ability to look into the future for ourselves and our organizations if we want to teach that same practice to the people that are coming to us for help. Here are 4 things that I believe a healthy organization, but you can say a healthy nonprofit, but I think just overall organizational culture. Here are 4 things that I believe a healthy organization must have. You must have an ability. I'm going to go from top left to, and I'm going to go this way. You must have an ability to adapt and evolve. Food insecurity is a highly complex social issue that is continuously evolving. There are still many people in this world who think that people that come to food pantries are just lazy people that don't want to find a job, right? Or people that go to soup kitchens. One of the clients that we were serving when I was running my nonprofit had 2 master's degrees, right? And she had just fallen on hard times. I have a dear friend who ran a sister organization to my organization, and he, one of the things I love that he does is he always walks his facility and talks to his clients. Walked into his facility one day, and it was his neighbor's wife in their facility, and they made eye contact, and the first thing she said to him is, "Please don't tell my husband." Right? So food insecurity evolves so fast, and it is complex. So a healthy organization should have the ability to meet people where they are, but also evolve based on what the families they're serving are saying they need, right? And the shifts are coming fast, right? Especially in this climate. So you have to have that ability. A healthy organization has clearly defined roles for staff, leadership, and board. Does a board know what they're doing? Does a board know what is expected of them? Does a board know that they're supposed to be fundraising? Right? If you're on a board, I'm sorry, this is why, I say this all the time. If you're on a board, you don't get a pass on the same way the nonprofit leader does not get a pass on thinking future state. Board members do not get a pass on thinking future state, oversight of the chief executive, and fundraising. Those are the 3 things. But is that clearly defined? And is there a clear definition for what the chief executive, the main leader does, and the people below them? Do people know what they're? It's very easy to go into an organization and say, we're going to rock out today. But do you understand what you're going to do and how you're going to do it? Right? And also, a healthy organization has diversified revenue streams. My personal opinion, and the way that I used to do it when I used to run my nonprofit, you have to be able to clearly identify 5 sources of revenue that fund your programs, right? 5 different sources of revenue: government grants, foundation grants, nonprofit events, private donations, and live private donations, donor engagement, mail campaign. I'm just throwing things out there. You have to have at least 4 or 5 diversified revenue streams that you can clearly define, right? And finally, and this is most important when we're talking about future state. And again, I must remind you, it's much easier to talk about these things if you're practicing self-care repeatedly. Healthy organization has a clearly defined mission and vision. The mission is what you do, and the vision is what you hope to achieve. And if it takes you more than 30 seconds to define those two things, go back to the drawing board and start workshopping it. And bonus, this is an incredibly helpful tool for self-care, for ensuring organizational health, and building consensus among board, staff, and stakeholders. Very important when you put something into practice to document it. Again, as a leader, having a succession plan ensures the long-term sustainability of your organization, but for you as well, it's a good practice to be documenting a succession plan for the sake of your organization. You are the steward of the future. You are the steward of the present, but you are also the steward of the future. And that's why it's important that you're taking care of yourself. And if you're taking care of yourself, you can document these things. Many organizations share it with me all the time, and it is a privilege for me to hear about the big crazy dreams and plans of an organization. What I always ask leadership after they share plans with me, do you have this written down somewhere? It's a good practice. My succession plan when I left Kumac was about 30 pages long, right? It's just some key things that it should contain. An organizational chart, the organization's mission, what you do, and vision, what you hope to achieve. It should contain information on strategic goals and the direction of the organization. And again, it doesn't have to be a narrative. Repetition and putting healthy practices into your daily activities. Just list bullet points, man. Where am I trying to be? Where are we trying to be? Where would I like my team and my organization to be? Just start listing them out. You don't have to write a narrative or a 30-page succession plan. It's really healthy to have it listed out. And then finally, and one of the keys to ensuring good organizational culture and good organizational health, and taking care of an organization is if you have a culture where information is freely shared. And for you all as leaders and stewards of your organizations and steward of the future state of your organization, one of the key pieces of information are who are the key contacts and what are the most important things to know about them? Who are the key donors? And what should we know about those donors? Because magically, if God blesses you with the privilege of being whisked off to Bali and you get to live there forever and ever and ever, right? That was always my nonprofit dream. And we used to talk about that all the time. Like, imagine one day if we weren't here and we were just on vacation forever. If you were and this is a good litmus test. If you were magically whisked off to Bali to retire there under the sun and on the beach forever and ever and ever, would your organization be okay? Would the fundraising strategies be okay? Is there there's something that could be referenced to ensure that your organization is okay? If not, you are the stewards. And one of the best way to steward the future state is to document now what you hope to be in the future. And it's much easier to do that if you're not really, really stressed. So, in summary, and after this summary, what I will do is I want to especially talk about something that I presume I'm probably highly likely right on this is giving you guys a lot of stress. I want to talk about some of these materials, and then I'll open it up for questions, and then Patrick, you can take us on from there. But in summary, take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. I will tell you, for me personally, being the dad of a 3-year-old, I know that my child, when I get home and she runs up to me and I hold her and I hug her, and you should know this, this is truly something. Children can absorb, physically absorb what you are feeling, and they will feel it, right? So for me personally, my self care is incredibly important because I want to be a good dad, and I don't want to project my stress onto my child. But excuse me, let me take a drink. This same practice goes to our teams, um, to our board, and to the families that we're serving. I'll repeat it again. Hurt people, but healed people, heal people, right? Take care of yourself because it has a powerful effect on the wellness of your organization. And being in a good place physically and mentally allows you to be an even better steward. You would not be on this call if you were not already a good steward of the future state of your organization. But being in a better place and having the constant practice and repetition of good habits helps you to be an even better steward. And when you're a good steward, you can plan for the future. So again, here's the QR code. You can scan this to hop on our website. You can learn more information. I'm going to stop my share. And then I'm going to put myself on mute and cough real quick.
While Mark is dealing with that tickle, just want to say thank you for that incredibly informative presentation, and just want to also say, if you're some of the things that you saw, particularly when it comes to the succession planning, maybe new concepts or things that you're not aware of just yet, and we just want to make that information available to all of you to make sure that your organizations are as sustainable as they possibly can be for the long term. So, I just want to stress that, if you see some of those things and you think, well, should I feel bad that I maybe am not doing this yet at my organization? Don't. This is hard. To do, to think about the future, it can be very daunting. But we just want to get everybody in the mindset that this is something that is going to help you and the people that you're serving, and make sure that you can continue to do so, for the long term. So I just want to kind of make
Yeah.
that clear to everybody.
And thank you, Patrick, for one, buying me time, but also mentioning that. And again, for you all as leaders, I'll emphasize to you, when we think of things like trauma informed training and succession planning, all of that, we all of a sudden think of it as like a to do for the organization. We very rarely think of these things and these concepts as a how to, on how to take care of ourselves and take care of our organization and take care of our mental and physical well-being as leaders, right? But it's one of the most, it's this documenting a succession plan. And remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I'll share this slide deck with Patrick so he can send it out to you guys. Just getting into the practice of writing down your big crazy dreams and your big crazy plans, right, is a good self-care practice. And it actually is the beginning stage of an organizational plan and a succession plan, right? So if you go to a trauma-informed training, a healing spaces training, a succession plan training, and you feel bad, flip the script on yourself. Adopt an attitude of gratitude for being privy to the knowledge, and say, how can I use this to build organizational health, right? And how can I use this to take care of me? Remember, can't be super if you first can't be human, right? And taking care of me, because me says I'm not okay right now, that's incredibly powerful, right? And it's a privilege that if you have the time and space and brain space and heart space to be able to think about that, because many of our clients, they don't have that ability, they don't have the time to think that way, right? So later, Joe. So real quick, because I know this is probably on everybody's mind. I'm going to drop this into the chat, and I can pull it up as a screen share, but um, Patrick, in the interest of time, and so that we can do some Q&A, I probably
And,
won't.
and I'll share these links to Mark in our wrap up email so that even folks that were not able
Perfect.
to make it can get the information.
Yeah, and you actually have the slide deck as well, Patrick. So
I
just
do, yeah.
that's the slide deck you can forward to everybody. So in the chat, three things our board members should actively be doing. Fundraising, oversight of the chief executive. Oh my gosh, what was the other thing that I said? It'll come to me, Michelle. But those are the three things. You have to help with fundraising, and 100% you have to have oversight of the chief executive and their actions. Oh, and I remember, you also have to help steward the future state of the organization, right? So those are three things board members should be doing. Now, to be clear, and again, putting on my nonprofit practitioner, if you are a working board, which means you are a smaller board for a smaller organization, usually an organization that has a budget of 250 or less, a working board also means that you as a board member, you're also helping with like day-to-day stuff, right? But as an organization evolves, those are the three main things that a nonprofit board should be doing. In the chat is a link to the Office of New. You're very welcome, Michelle. The Office of New Americans is an office that we have as well. They are in but not of the Department of Human Services. And they have a Know Your Rights PDF. I've dropped the link into the chat. This is something that there's a Know Your Rights as an individual and Know Your Rights as an organization. So especially if you come in contact with a federal officer, an immigration officer, this is a very helpful document for you to have. I know that many of you are probably also thinking about the changes in federal immigration policy that are coming very fast. I spoke with the governor's office this morning. We will be releasing documents and guidance little by little. The first thing that has already come out is from the Department of Education. That is the second link that you see in here. What schools should know if they come into contact with federal officers. But this is very applicable as well for nonprofits. We at the governor's office will continue to release information as we keep up with everything. But I highly encourage. Thank you, Ryan. I highly encourage everyone to take a look at these two links. And again, Patrick said he'll send these out along with the slide deck as well. So
All
I'll
right.
stop there.
Yeah, so let's open it up to questions. Feel free to raise your hand and unmute or drop a question in the chat and we will read it into the record here. So anything at all, feel free to ask Mark.
Yes, hi. My name is Quasheen McWright. I'm from Calvary Baptist Church in Garfield. I have a question. Um, when the people come to the pantry, when I came to your pantry organization before, when y'all gave us copy of all different kind of pantries. When I give it to the people that come to the pantry and when they called them, they're not residents of that town, so they're not authorized to use that pantry.
So that really depends on the organization. For the most part, um, pantries will serve people from other municipalities. But if you could just in the chat, if you can, to me, send me a good number for you. Would love to just talk about any of those questions off.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, feel free to just message me and then I'll give you a call after we're done.
Okay.
We can talk about that a little bit more.
Okay.
Um, so we do have a question from Jessica Arboleda, who said, "Can you repeat the five best ways to sustain a nonprofit?"
Oh,
So
there's
I think
many ways to
you were getting into
this.
that a little bit, Mark.
Let me see. I don't know if I went into. Oh, is it the four things that a healthy organization should have? Was that the?
That sounds about right. I don't know if
Yeah,
Jessica.
I'm sorry. It's just you mentioned it, the 5 ways to sustain our no-profit organization, like private organizations, federal organizations, but I don't get it all those 5 ways.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. So what Jessica is referring to, and for everybody's information, I said one of the four things that I said are signs of a healthy organization is diversified revenue streams, right? Meaning clearly defined
yes.
different sources of funding that support your mission. So, and Jessica, I was just shooting from the hip on that one. It's different from organization to organization. So federal grants, philanthropic grants, live event fundraising, private donor cultivation donations, and say like a mail a mailing campaign, fundraising campaign, right? There's multiple different strategies that people can have, but these are five of the most common, shooting from the hip that come top to mind for me. But the key, Jessica, is um, working to ensure that you're relying on not just one pot of funding. And the reason why it's so important is because remember, people now rely on you, right? And so because people rely on you, you have to ensure that you're not relying on just one pot, because if one pot disappears, you've got, two, three, four others that you can think about.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any more questions for Mark?
I think someone from the Wholesome Pantry, Patrick, was about to
This
share a
is just for
statement.
Mark.
Okay.
Oh, sorry about that.
Go
That's
ahead,
Yeah.
Diane.
okay.
I see half
Yeah,
of
I
your statement,
know.
but yeah, I'd love to hear
Yes,
the entire thing, but
it's coming.
okay.
Hi, George. I'm sorry. I had to leave. I tried to send a chat, but it couldn't go.
I think Angela, was that you? But then she may have dropped off.
Yeah, Angela, you were coming in and out. If it's easier to send it in the chat, we can read it. But
This is Tracy. I just want to first of all say thank you to everybody. I think what we're all, Mark, especially thank you for taking the time to give us these tools. I think all of us are, this has been 5 years of nonstop movement for many of us in ways that we never could have anticipated prior to the pandemic. And now we're about to face into another curve where God knows what it is going to look like. So we're all, the most important thing for all of us to remember is we're all here for each other. None of us are in this alone. That is the whole point of this Office of Food Security. That's the whole point of this coalition that we're building here, is to be here for each other so that we can lean on each other and garner strength from our collective. So thank you for kind of underscoring that in your remarks, because the isolation and feeling that the whole weight of the world is on our shoulders is exhausting. But to know that we're kind of shouldering in among all of our team here is definitely makes the weight a little bit lighter. So that is definitely a piece of the self-care, is being part of this community. And I just want to thank all of you for the work that you're doing to support all of us. So that's all.
And the thing that I just want to add too is, if anybody, particularly when it comes to the succession planning side of things, if anybody has a good organizational chart or a fundraising plan, or if you're doing some of the things that Mark mentioned, obviously every organization is different, but that's a big part of what we want to do, is share those best practices. So we would love to talk with some of you guys one-on-one if you are doing some of these things already, so we can share things that are working with everybody that's operating here in Bergen County. So please let us know if there's things along those lines that people want to share. And also on the self-care side, Mark mentioned some of the things that he would do with his staff, both in the state, and I even remember visiting QMAC, I think with Amanda from Meadowlands Y, and just talking about how everything was intentional and how welcoming of a space it was for both staff and the folks that were coming in to get assistance from QMAC. So we wanna highlight those things that you guys are doing well, and sort of show them off as a model for other folks here in the county that want to do them. So any other questions? Obviously want to be respectful of everybody's time, but while we still have Mark, ask away. And if not, we'll share his contact information too, if things sort of come to mind after we wrap up. But anybody who has a question, feel free to unmute or drop it in the chat. And Karen did just say sharing in more detail how pantries handle succession planning and fundraising would be really helpful. I know fundraising is something that we do want to focus on with a future Lunch and Learn, or talking about at our summit. So that is definitely thinking about. And thank you for mentioning that, Karen.
And I cannot stress this enough. If you're thinking about succession planning and fundraising, those two efforts are supercharged by attitudes of gratitude, healthy practices of self-care, and organizational health. It is possible to fundraise for a nonprofit based on the bad. Things are really bad out here. Oh, you should be really afraid of hunger and blah, 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 blah. But that gets you a lot of one-off funding, right? But strengths-based fundraising that gives donors an opportunity to invest in your big, crazy dreams for the long term is a pathway to sustainable funding. And in the for-profit space, in the corporate world, we call it creating a product that everybody wants to either invest in or buy, right? And so think of it that way. Like we often underestimate, man, how influential self-care and good organizational health can be to so many different aspects of our organization. But I promise you, it's a key path. So if you're focused on fundraising and succession planning, I promise you a healthy way to begin supercharging that is to think about how to take care of yourself.
Very well said, Mark. All right. Any more questions for Mark? And then we will wrap up for the afternoon. And thank you again, everybody, for joining, taking some time out to be with us here this afternoon. But any more questions for Mark before we wrap up? All right. Well, again, thank you everybody for joining us and kicking off our Lunch and Learn series for 2025. We're going to be sending out a calendar for the next few months. We're going to be doing these every other month this year. So be on the lookout for that. Some really exciting and interesting topics we have to follow this very informative presentation from Mark. So thank you again, Mark. Thank you everybody for joining. Have a great rest of your day, and everybody stay warm out there.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.